Welcome to RSAC Conference 2025. We are broadcasting here at the Cyber Risk TV studio in Broadcast Alley, which is Moscone West. I'm co-host of Paul Security Weekly, Jeff Mann, and I am joined for this interview by a gentleman named Gal Elbaz. He is co-founder and CTO of a company called Oligo Security. Welcome, Gal.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into cybersecurity.
Yeah, so I actually started my career at Checkpoint.
Okay.
Was there for almost a decade.
Wow.
My
okay.
job was to find vulnerabilities, both in our products, and help work with developers and fight with developers. Again, depends on which day, but most of my job was involved around finding the biggest 0 days and the biggest applications in the world and go lecture about it. So this is how I got into security, and this is actually what led me to come up with Oligo. So I'll tell it in a second.
Well, yeah. What did make you decide to come up with Oligo?
Yeah, so I just look cool. I'm a nerd, and like one of the projects I did at Checkpoint, I hacked Instagram because they're Instagram. And all I needed was just one vulnerability in one open source package. In the beginning, I thought, it's only one vulnerability in one package. There's literally tens of thousands of open sources only in Instagram. Like, how much damage can be done, right?
Right.
But the moment that we can actually run code, we're like, wait, all we need is just one vulnerability in one package, and we're taking down one of the biggest infrastructures in the world, right? Like this photo sharing library, and all we needed to do is just sending you one image in order to completely take over. And like this really made us like to rethink how we look in this whole situation. Like we've been dealing with vulnerability research and hunting for our whole life, right? The co-founders, and suddenly we understood like, wow, there's so much money invested in trying to secure application from just scanning the code, right? But it just became too much, right? More code and more vulnerabilities, like an endless a chase you cannot really win, right? And trying to patch everything. But when you look at it from runtime, actually protecting applications, both the legacy approaches, like from the network level or like on the host, we're not really capable of dealing with up-level attacks, right? Or up-level threats. And like this really, made us rethink, wow, like maybe there should be something different or a new approach, not only looking for symptoms or cause, like looking for the cause of the attack and not only the symptom, and how we can actually see inside. And like, I think this really, was for us like this pivotal moment that we just decided to leave everything, start building the technology. And I think it was like a year before Log4Shell happened. I think that was our, not just another vulnerability, but just our wake-up call, right?
Right. Well, that was certainly an industry wake-up call. And as you said, it sort of illustrated or brought to light that most software these days, most applications are built on layer upon layer upon layer of inherited libraries and APIs and open source and closed source, and God knows where it's coming from. And the traditional defenses of code review, security application assessment just wasn't cutting it. I play in the world of PCI in the daytime, so those are requirements, primarily for web applications, is to do code reviews before it gets pushed out to production, as well as doing some. Used to be you had the choice of a security assessment or protect yourself behind a web application firewall. Now you have to do both in version 4. So, what I'm hearing you saying is you were discovering those two things alone don't cut it.
Yeah, definitely. And like you're starting right to the point, because like when you look at it from the WAF angle, like I grew up in Checkpoint, right? I know network security, but like WAF was an amazing invention that created another layer of mitigation on the network layer, right? But the stuff that are like, again, breaches are still happening, right? I think even a few days ago, Mandiant and Verizon, the latest threat report showed that like it's the first time that vulnerability exploitation became the number one attack vector for organization, exceeding the email phishing campaigns. And I think what we saw, and like, 3 years ago, it's like this trend that like, wow, it's became a lot easier to attack applications.
Right.
Attackers are operating within the app itself, and this is where like WAF is creating a amazing a layer on the network, but if it arrives the host, like it means it bypasses the WAF, right?
Right.
And when we're talking about like protecting the workload itself, of course, all of those great approaches like cloud workload protection or like anything that we started doing like years ago, now has really changed. We're moving to the cloud, distributed application, the attacks are becoming much more complex. And this is again, all of those approaches existed when Log4Shell happened, right? So what were they? And I think this was like, our pivotal moment to see like, wow, no one actually looking inside the app or just looking from the outside, whether from the network or from the host there. But in order to really catch the attackers, you need to be where they're playing, inside the app itself.
Are they really more complex, or are they being more creative and clever and just discovering areas that aren't being monitored or watched?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, right? Also, the awareness, understanding of like, vulnerabilities or zero day, it's like a weapon, in this modern era.
Right.
But as you mentioned earlier, like the software stack became a lot more complex, right? When we're talking about Log4Shell, it's a problem coming and originating from your repos, right? One might think, but when the Exi backdoor happened, it was coming through the infrastructure itself, right?
Right.
Or when we talk about Log4Shell as an example, everyone was going and looking for the repos, but wait, what about the applications you bought
Right.
or you deployed? They also have those problems, right? Even if you can't patch them, it doesn't mean they don't have those problems as well. So this, I think, was like combination of both. Like it made it like even a lot bigger problem that we have been.
So you started a company and you sort of came up with a terminology or a name for a new approach. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so when we started Oligo, like what we basically have done, like we invented a new technology when we call the deep app inspection. Basically what it allows us is to monitor application without the need to access the source code.
Okay.
And it allows us to solve a decade-long problem which like RASP solution tried but was really intrusive and wasn't really scalable and deployable. So we had to come up with something which is like non-intrusive by design but can see deep enough in order to deal with those. And this is what we call the deep app inspection that allowed us first to see the true risks, what's happening inside the application, and tell you the exploitability part of your CVEs. Yeah, you have a CVE, but it's a theoretical finding. Now we're adding the real context, like is it running or running the vulnerable function? Like, and with that, helping the team identify the true risk. But when we're talking about what the ADR or CADR actually means, is this revolution that like, hey, we can finally see inside the app layer. And we can detect or prevent attacks by this unique ability, not only to look inside the application, but to now being able to look at a specific code component and understand what this piece of code starts to deviate. So actually, we're very fortunate to work with the people that invented and wrote the Windows Defender in the last 20 years, one of the most prominent runtime tools. It was invented for the laptops, right, for the endpoints.
Sure.
And when we talked about like what we're doing inside the cloud app applications, like one of them actually mentioned, he said, hey, like what you guys cracked, it's not only just like seeing what's a library is doing or what it shouldn't do. Now we just add the whole context of an EDR, like whether it's talking to IP and if this IP is malicious. And what you guys cracked is the first ability to monitor what's happening inside the application, inside the processes. This is where he helped us name it like an ADR, like stands for the app, not only for the endpoint or the host, as we all knew up until now.
So I'm curious, is your product, are you marketing it more to security teams at organizations or developers or both?
Great question. So like we look at it like as a platform that can also help like with multi-posture. We're not also like the first company that can show you code in runtime, your usual SCA funding and code scanning. Now you can actually see the runtime representation of them and help you to fix your developer issues. But hey, we're on a runtime, so we can also help you with your container security issues and help your DevOps to do the base OS upgrade or like the ability to understand its container risk. But hey, we also monitor any piece of software, right? We don't care if you built it, bought it, deployed it, or even stole it, right? And that means we can actually help you on your third-party software, your Grafanas, your Argo CD, something you actually deploy from the internet and should get an upgrade. So like in that manner, we see ourselves really helping like different personas. We talked a little bit about PCI or compliance.
I was going to say, you're hitting a trigger for PCI.
Exactly, because like we don't only look at like those representation of code components in runtime, but we also give the full aspect of their inherited risk, not only CVEs and vulnerabilities, but also the license of them or the legal aspect of them, right? Are you abusing some license that you shouldn't? Or like you have to comply to some regulation, you need to build a full software inventory like the ASBOM regulation or VEX. So I think those stuff really helped us to help organization, with their initiatives or like, getting into where they want to be with FedRAMP or really tapping into that, but like harnessing the power of what we've done.
Well, now that PCI 4.01 is fully in effect, I, as an assessor, am going in and talking to clients, and I'm starting to ask for the evidence to meet the requirement. It happens to be 6.3.2, and technically it doesn't say SBOM, but what it says is you need to have an inventory of all your system and system components, application components of any customer bespoke software that you've built, and demonstrate that you're using that information you're collecting to find and fix vulnerabilities. A little bit of a paraphrase, but it sounds like you can address that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the industry started like giving it like the right names, right? The SBOM was the software bill of materials, right? Something we took from the industrial, right? Like when you have a huge machine and you need to understand when one thing is not working, how you can actually replace it on the same essence or building an amazing application, but they're built on different layers of code, right? And that was the first layer of it, like just having the full software components inventory. But then like when we started talking about risk or communicating risk, this is where the VEX format, just taking the SBOM and adding the exploitability part on top of each and every package. Does it have a CVE, but this CVE applies or doesn't apply? It's actually creating a real risk. And I think those stuff really help vendors and big companies communicate this risk in a lot easier, scalable way.
We're at the very beginning of the conference this week, and I haven't had a chance to talk to a lot of people. The vendor floor is not open yet, but CVE has been kind of in the news in the last week or two. But on our show, on Paul Security Weekly, we've been talking about CVEs for months because Paul, the guy that is the main host, he works for a company that part of their job is discovering vulnerabilities, and he's finding through experience, not all vulnerabilities that are discovered get a CVE. Some CVEs are a little bit distracting. Sometimes there's more than one company that's claiming the CVE. Who decides when a CVE is issued is a little bit up in the air. They actually had an instance where they discovered a vulnerability, gave it to the vendor just fixed it with an upgrade, but didn't bother to issue a CVE. And we're all like, what's going on here? The whole, not the industry, but the consumer side of this industry is very much entrenched and trained to jump when there's a CVE. But there's more than just CVEs, and there's more issues than get reported on CVE. How do you and your platform convince your clients, no, this really is a problem, whether it's a CVE or not?
Yeah, so that's amazing actually, because it's exactly touching the point that we want to solve, right? Because the ADR piece of what we've done is like the ability to detect threats on the up level.
And that's application detection and response.
Yeah. When we add the CADR, it means like we're building the full aspect of like, hey, we can like attackers. The first front that attackers are facing is the app itself. Right, this is the way to get the initial access to breach the organization through the app.
Right.
But then, of course, attackers want to propagate to the workload or to the cloud. So we believe that the same revolution that happened like with the antiviruses and the EDR, when there was like something good happening, but someone came and did the next evolution of it, and in the end, like from augmenting like to totally replacing. We think and we believe that the same revolution should happen to cloud applications, and it should start with the app layer, because this is the missing layer and the most important layer.
Right.
And when we're talking about CVEs, actually it is something really close to our heart, right? And CVEs are meant, and their whole purpose was to help vendors or help the world understand where the issue is, and what's the real risk and how should I fix it, right? There's a reason for that, like you said. So it doesn't help to fix an issue, but not notifying like the users about the real risk, so they can actually know and go and patch, right? And we did something really really cool in Oligo. Actually, we have one of the best threat research team in the globe, and we've been conducting like vulnerability research and hunting, and one day we actually encountered something like you mentioned, like what we call a shadow vulnerability. Basically, it's those CVEs that doesn't get
The attention, the
the
notice.
attention or the
Yeah.
real numeric number in order to
Right.
help users identify them. And those are problems that are happening because like the maintainers decided like to dispute it, and they decide, right, they're the maintainers, this is the open source world, or again there was just like a disagreement about the real impact or the risk, right? Or just like it's an insecure by design library and the developer did a mistake, when again those stuff happen. And we did a whole talk at DEF CON about it, about this concept, that what was really striking in the same year, we found like a very, like we're nerds, like we're AI nerds,
Right.
and we were using a famous framework called Ray. Ray, it's basically Kubernetes for AI.
Yep.
GPT was trained on Ray,
Right.
made by the amazing Anyscale company. And we saw there were like 5 vulnerabilities that's been disclosed and were disputed by the maintainer. And
Wow.
one of them was like a vicious RCE, like, running code, and like the maintainer, hey, this is the intended behavior of it.
Right.
And when we looked
I hate to
inside-
cut you
yeah.
off, but we're actually out of time.
Oh, wow.
We could keep going, obviously,
Yeah.
and you're very passionate about
Yeah.
this. If you guys have captured that passion and are interested and want to get more information, you can go to securityweekly.com/Oligo RSAC. And for all information about our coverage, go to Cyber Risk Alliance. For all of Cyber Risk Alliance coverage, securityweekly.com/RSAC. Gal, thanks again for
Thank
joining us
you.
today. We'll be back shortly with the next interview.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.